Hello and welcome to this week's Market Talk. And now we have a pair of sales directors with us. We have Paul Gilhooly from Grat Brothers Catering Equipment, and we have Steve Elliott from Valentine and Cuisine Equip. Thanks, guys, for joining us this week.
Our pleasure.
Excellent stuff. I'm going to start off with Paul. So obviously this time has been quite unprecedented. So could you give us a little bit of an idea about how Grat Brothers Catering Equipment has coped during the coronavirus crisis?
Right, so here we are mid-COVID. Something we were not something we weren't expecting. What did they say? We're all in the stormy seas, but we might have different boats. So the Grat Brothers, we've stayed operational throughout. Initially, looking after our clients that were in the healthcare sector, clinics, care homes, hospitals, etc. But we have come through now to this period of the current normal. I don't know if it's new. I think the only thing that they say you can rely on now is that things will change and continue to change, certainly for the foreseeable. We do feel we're in a bit of a steadier place now, albeit we're on the threat of a second lockdown, possibly. But we seem to have gathered back to sites being open from from the construction side of things. Certainly, the service and maintenance has got back to some kind of normality in terms of we're getting on with preventative maintenance programs, and in fact we've probably had unprecedented levels of unhindrance with our preventative maintenance schemes. Reactive maintenance is very strong at the moment as people are fixing and mending rather than replacing. That judgment call that people make whether to replace or whether to fix is definitely erring on the side of fixing. But we've benefited really at Grat Brothers being a division of a much bigger entity. Even though we're a family business, we have the resource at head office such as a HR department, an IT department. So, for instance, the HR have been great in terms of communicating regularly with the staff about what they should be doing to keep themselves safe, to keep the customers safe. To make sure that their wellness and mental health is good also. The IT department were amazing in the early days, enabling people that don't normally work from home. I know, Steve, you and I, and with salespeople, a lot of that is done remotely, whereas we had a lot of people that had never worked externally to the office. So getting them enabled with the IT, with the software, and having the confidence to be able to work remotely, that kind of has really helped us through these ever-changing times.
Excellent stuff. And you mentioned that you've had a lot of service work. So has your service department grown in accordance with that? And how does it compare to kind of the project side, which I would assume has not been so busy at this point?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've grown. Unfortunately, we've had to make some tough choices. We've recognised that we've got a team of engineers, for instance. We're trying to make sure that we've got the right engineers with the right skills in the right places, and we're covering that with the team that we've got now. It's definitely been stronger than those project sales. For instance, all those projects that were spade in the ground before COVID hit have returned to site, albeit in a socially distanced way. So we've had to change the way we approach that project work, but they have returned to site. In terms of the project side of things, there are still things further down the line. The consultant-led business, for instance, and the major tenders that we do through main contractors that are into 2021, 2022, they're still prevalent. It's the decisions being made on those projects that would have been started or initiated during this phase seem to be that they're holding off making that decision until they absolutely have to. We're pleased with the level of business that we've got in these strange times. We're looking at maybe new areas, new market sectors that we hadn't traditionally been in, trying to just think smartly and strategically about where is there going to be budgets, where is there going to be money spent, and how, what and how can we do to offer the products and services that we offer to maybe different clients to those new market sectors. So, for instance, with the staycation, there's a lot of, you look on the telly, the National Trust, English Heritage, you know, people are spending time at tourist attractions within the UK. You know, that's something that we've been looking at. Obviously, healthcare and care homes are strong and going to remain stronger. So it's just trying to be agile and trying to be flexible about where we put our resource to try and develop business.
I'm sure, Steve, just to bring you into the conversation, a lot of that chimes with what you're seeing as well. In terms of the Valentine and cuisine equipped business, are you managing that completely remotely at the moment?
In the main, we have a skeleton staff in the office. There are roles that can't be achieved from working from home. So you know, like packing spares and machines, and you know, for some of Paul's projects and things like that, which we're very pleased for your orders. Thank you, Paul. But thanks. And you know, so they can't be done in the office. But we've worked all the way through lockdown. Myself and my sales administrator have got one of the office phones at home, and we're kind of operating in that way and have been. We are going out. The external sales guys, now they're back part-time, are actually going out, but really only when absolutely necessary. You know, we're trying to sort of keep people as safe as possible in line with the government guidelines. So we've maintained you know, a good level of activity. And I had a guy who, in the first couple of weeks of lockdown, he phoned me up and he said, Steve, he said, are you still sending out engineers? Are you able to supply spares? And I said, yes. I said, what sort of business have you got? He said, oh, I've got a takeaway burger joint in the Gloucester Road in Bristol. He said, it's every day's like a Friday at the moment. So,
right.
So yeah, so we're doing okay, thank you.
Right, yeah. But Paul obviously mentioned there that at the moment there is this kind of shift towards, you know, replacing equipment and fixing it and mending it and so on, which isn't really what manufacturers want to hear when you're in the business of new equipment sales. How are you kind of contending with that?
Well, of course, if you buy a Valentine fryer, you know, there's that they don't tend to go too wrong. So there's quite a lot of old fryers out there. So we're kind of used to being patient for replacement orders. That being said, what Paul says is absolutely true. People are fixing their fryers, and you know, again, we're seeing that in the sale of spare parts and baskets. You know, we still sell a basket for a fryer that hasn't been made for something like 35 years. There's still a few of them about. So
good stuff. So, Steve, how has the pandemic affected product development then at Valentine's Swiss HQ? Has things changed around there at all?
They've actually taken on this year. They've taken on a sort of an innovations director, and he started just almost probably at the beginning of lockdown. But we had a Zoom conference with them a couple of weeks ago, and the one product that you may have seen on social media is they're developing a new small 3-litre tabletop fryer. Which will be on the market in a few months' time, and they've got some interesting ideas that they shared with us the other day that I can't really go into at the moment, but we'll let you know as and when they're appropriate.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Just going back to you, Paul, then. So recently you guys announced that you had a contract renewal with Whitbread. So can you just tell me how that came about? Because I think that was pre-COVID that you actually agreed that, wasn't
it? Yeah. Whitbread have been a client of Grap Brothers for 25, 30 consecutive consecutive years. So we're in constant dialogue with them, although we started to look at formalising a sign or a new contract for Christmas. It's epidemic. So although it curtailed revenue values that we were expecting over the next 3-4 years, they still remain a very important, critical client to Grap Brothers, and we've worked together through this situation. They were one of the clients that had a lot of projects underway where the sites actually had to shut down. And again, I made a point earlier about the health and safety team within Grap Brothers actually visited those sites to make sure that they were COVID safe for our staff, and to help and assist Whitbread in getting them up and running in a safe manner. So yes, it was good to get that contract. The point Stephen made earlier about the reliability, the situation we're finding as well is that although we are fixing and repairing, there will come a time eventually where the best advice to the client is to actually replace. So I think that work's not gone away. It's just gone into the reservoir that will be released at some point in the future. You need your crystal ball to know when that is.
Steve, you obviously mentioned earlier about some of the innovations that are going on at the factory in Switzerland. Obviously, with Brexit on the horizon now, in terms of getting those products over borders and things like that, is that taking up quite a lot of your time preparing for that?
Well, fortunately not mine. And of course, Switzerland, where the bulk of our products come from, have, although they enjoy an agreement with the EU, they're not actually an EU country. So we have to go through the same level of hoops that people who are importing from within the EU will have to do so. So we have to pay the VAT on entry into the UK, for example, and we have to have our stock delivered in a bonded vehicle as it comes across from the EU through the EU to Switzerland. So it's not such a big deal for us really, but it'll be interesting to see how this changes, perhaps with sort of our delivery times, and in terms of extending the number of days it takes to get the products across. But of course, Paul needn't worry, because we carry a big stock in Reading of the most popular and favourite fryers. So we're absolutely fine with that.
I was actually going to ask you next about the stock situation. Obviously carrying stock entails a cost. Have you had to kind of review all of that at this particular period in time?
Yes, we have, because our turnover has reduced. Of course, the number of pieces of equipment that we're sending out has reduced. So we kind of have to look at this all the time, but we still maintain a stock so that we can supply our national accounts and people who rely on our equipment all the time.
So Steve, how have you been able to keep in touch with your distributor network through this time as well? Has that been easy or difficult?
Well, it's been okay. We've had to learn new things. I mean, it's who kind of thought of Zoom in February? When we were all sort of standing, looking at each other, and actually passing the time of day face to face at the HRC show in March. Who would have known that we'd have to learn all about Zoom and Microsoft Teams and things like this? So we have carried out quite a few sort of distributor meetings where we've shown products to the sales team and and made them aware of some of the features and benefits. So it's been relatively easy but different.
Excellent stuff. Coming back to you, Paul. I remember coming up to your Stevenage head office a few years back now, and you're in the middle of a whole revamp. So has that now finished, and what kind of benefits has that brought you, especially during this point when maybe everyone's been working remotely?
I don't know if we've enjoyed the full benefits that we were expecting, but no, I'm glad to confirm that the office project has been completely finished now. We've got we've taken a tired building that we've been growing into and expanding from the last 20 years to like a state-of-the-art facility, and we just literally got through the door when we had to say to everybody, I'm sorry, you can't come in the new office, you're going to have to work from home, which has been a shame really, but nonetheless the investment needed to be done, and it kind of like proves that it proves that Grat Brothers is prepared to invest in the catering division and make sure it's there in another 20 years. So we've got a fantastic new facility that nobody's enjoying at the moment. So this COVID thing will come to an end at some point in the future. We too have jobs, roles, responsibilities that can really only be done from the office environment. We've just linking back a little bit. We've had the technology and we have the software to do Zoom and Skype and WebEx and all of these video conferencing facilities. And I think Mark Drazen made the point in one of your earlier market talks that project managers, salespeople, the culture of the industry was to go face to face and see the client. You know, I genuinely believe that is the best way to build relationships, etc. But we've hands been forced a little bit, and our clients have been encouraged to actually give this video conferencing a try. So we would sometimes have to, at short notice, get in the car, drive 3 hours, do a meeting, drive 3 hours back to then have drawings or plans revised. With this video conferencing, I can be sat at home office, my designer sat in their office at home, and the client in their office, wherever that may be, and actually have the meeting and change the design live in front of the client, making little tweaks and revisions to the drawing. So actually, within that 3 hours of travel time, we've got the revised drawing completed and agreed, and actually it's wonderfully efficient, saving the planet. There's many pluses to it. So if there's a small silver lining to a very dark COVID cloud, it is encouraging efficient work practices, and we would embrace that.
Sure, yeah. And Paul, on the subject of design, obviously in the last few months, particularly since the industry reopened, a lot of operators, particularly in the pub and restaurant sector, have obviously had to kind of adapt their premises and their back of house areas for social distancing and all the guidelines they need to meet. But beyond that, do you think there's going to be a long-term change to the way that kitchens are designed?
I think certainly this is, certainly the modelling that you hear other people use. It could be 3, 4, 5 years before we're back to the pre-COVID normality. So, for instance, a lot of our clients, for instance, in the garden centre world or wherever there's a servery with a tray that slides along the counter, that just can't happen now. So we've had to work with certain clients in how they serve. They're going to call to order rather than tray service, for instance. So I think the market is forever changing. There's big trends such as plant-based product. Stephen, we're seeing with customers now, it's not only just keeping fries separate to batters and breadcrumbs product. We're actually seeing people asking for dedicated plant-only fryers.
Yeah, it's true.
I think it's ever evolving, which is why it's one of the best industries in the world, because it keeps evolving, and you just keep having to adapt to meet those changes. So I'm delighted to hear, Steve, that there's not going to Valentine have got plenty of stock, and there's going to be no price implications on your products going forward. That's wonderful news, and hopefully we can sell a few more fryers that are dedicated to plant-only product.
Yeah, it's very timely that you mentioned that, Paul, really, because our mutual client that you mentioned earlier has requested a particular type of fryer Valentine were able to put together and get onto the market a couple of years ago, which is a twin pan allergen fryer, which will separate out all of those different food groups. But not only that, it will filter the oil and keep the oil separate within the machine. So it's been very, very useful, really, having all that sort of requirement.
I think, Steve, we sort of forget that prior to COVID, allergens was obviously one of the big talking points in in the equipment world.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, so it still remains that way, of course. But there's less of it.
Yeah.
Indeed. So I know that recently you guys at Valentine, actually you donated some equipment to, I think it's called, was it Fat Dads in Bristol, and it's basically a community kitchen. So can you tell me how that came about and how you're helping them to feed vulnerable adults in that area?
Yes, it came about through a direct message, really, an appeal from the founder, whose name is Paul, and he was really looking for equipment, and we sort of thought about it and decided it would be very good to help this very worthwhile project. So my colleague Lorna has been sort of working with him and finding out exactly what he needed, and we were able to donate a piece of equipment that will keep some of the food warm without spoiling, and a smallish tabletop fryer.
Good stuff, good stuff. And so what kind of prospects do you see for the catering equipment supply chain in the coming months then, Steve?
The prospects, I think that the recovery, as Paul has alluded to, will be slow and cautious, really. And I think that there are opportunities to be had. We've got to kind of make our offering as good as possible, and make sure that the service that we offer to distributors and to end users is second to none.
Good stuff. And we're approaching the end of our time now, so I'm going to finish off with asking the same question to Paul. So how do you see the catering equipment supply chain coping over the next few months? If you looked in your crystal ball, as you mentioned earlier, what do you think is going to happen?
So I believe it's going to be tough. I think we've got to focus very much so on great customer service. I think clients, old and new, will be looking for distributor partners that give them the best advice, that give them the best customer service, but ultimately that can deliver the best value to them. They've had it tough also. So that's one thing that we're trying to work on, retaining all the clients that we've enjoyed for many years, but also reaching out to new people on the understanding that people, this might shake up and present other opportunities for us, where people are questioning what actually be for a change. They might be ready to adapt those new modern working practices. They might be ready to have a conversation about how we might be able to add value over and above their incumbent supplier. So that's something that we're working very hard on. But who knows? Who knows what the future will hold? We are doing our very best to get through this situation and come out the other side of it in as strong as possible position. Because, Valentine's a very established, mature company. We've been going 70 years. Hopefully in 70 years, when we look back at COVID, we might think it was just a blink of an eye. Who knows? It might be, it might not be, but we'll see.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you very much, Steve, for joining us today. And join us again next week for another episode of Market Talk.